WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Accra, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online on wadr.org. Welcome to NewsLink, and here are the headline stories. The Guinean government confirms 13 deaths and over 170 injuries from Monday's deadly explosion at the Conakry oil reservoir. Algiers invite Malian authorities and signatory armed groups of the 2015 peace agreement to resume dialogue. And Ghana's Electoral Commission abandons indelible link embracing biometric verification for 2024 general elections.
The biometric technology makes it difficult for a person who has been verified and cast their vote to come a second time. So there is no need for indelible ink.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NewsLink.
A warm welcome to our listeners in Ghana, the Gambia, and Liberia. Let's begin in Guinea, where the government late on Monday confirmed 13 fatalities and 178 injuries from the deadly explosion at the Conakry oil depot. According to Dr. Omar Juheba, the Minister of Health and Public Hygiene, the victims include both Guinean citizens and foreign nationals. The minister revealed that effective medical treatment has allowed 89 of the total injured persons to reunite with their families. As Taufik Abdenasur reports, the explosion impacted the primary hydrocarbon storage facility of the National Oil Company in Kaloum district during the night of December 17 to 18, resulting in a shortage of fuel across the country.
In the aftermath of the tragic incident, Guinean interim president Colonel Mamadou Doumbouya expressed his condolences to the families of the victims and urged citizens to stand together in solidarity. The government acknowledged the immediate outpouring of support, particularly for the town of Kaloum, where the tragedy occurred. Several nations, including Senegal, Mali, and the United States, announced gestures of support for Guinea. The authorities indicated that they are actively engaged in providing appropriate care for the injured. As a precautionary measure, the government recommended the use of masks in the quarantine district in response to the crisis. Guinean authorities have implemented various measures, including the establishment of a crisis unit, the creation of an evacuation plan for those near the People's Place, and the activation of a health emergency in Greater Conakry. Public and private sector workers, except for defense and security forces, and medical professionals are advised to stay at home. Meanwhile, the impact of the incident has led to a social crisis in interior cities, exacerbated by a shortage of fuel.
Taufik Abdenasur with that report. And to the Sahel region, Algiers wants to try to salvage what remains of the peace agreement signed between Bamako and the armed independence groups in northern Mali. After intense fighting between August and November, the Malian army regained control of the Kidal region. Algeria, the mediator between the Malian authorities and the armed independence groups that signed the peace agreement, has been holding talks with the signatory groups since last week. David Vincent has more.
Several representatives of the armed groups that signed the peace agreement have been received in Algiers. The Movement for the Salvation of Azawad, the main pro-Bamako signatory group, was the first to honor the invitation last week. Then on Monday, the delegation for the Permanent Strategic Framework, CSP, which recently took up arms against Bamako, was heard. Algiers invited them to give priority to dialogue and negotiation, pointing out that only the 2015 peace agreement made this possible. According to Algiers, this agreement makes it possible to distinguish the groups that signed the peace agreement from the violent extremist groups operating in Sahel, particularly in northern and central Mali. But the resumption of dialogue could be difficult, given the recapture of Kidal, the stronghold of the pro-independence armed groups, the CSP acknowledges. For the moment, no proposal has been made by Algeria for a possible resumption of dialogue. For its part, the Movement of the Salvation of Azawad, the main pro-Bamako signatory group, did not wish to comment on its exchanges with the Algerian mediation.
David Vincent filed that report. Still in Mali, there is a growing concern from political stakeholders following the transitional parliament's approval of the 2024 budget. As the budget reached its approval stage, There is no allocation set aside for the upcoming elections initially scheduled for February next year. However, the transitional authorities have since decided to postpone these elections. A modern houseman, this report filed in by our Bamako correspondent Aliu Cham.
In 2024 finance law, a budget of 70 billion CFA francs was allocated for the organization of elections next year, notably when the law was adopted by the National Transitional Council (CNT). Specific funds earmarked for holding the elections were not included. However, the law does establish provisions for an independent electoral management authority known as AGE. Abubakar Siddiqui, former president of the Malian People's Democratic Party and a CNT member, expressed confidence that the existence of AGE under the law would enable it to fulfill its mission effectively. On the other hand, parties opposed to the transition view of the absence of a designated budget for elections and the finance law as the lack of commitment from the current authorities to conduct the presidential election in 2024. They advocate for a return to constitutional order, emphasizing concerns about the transparency and fairness of the electoral process. Sekou Niame Batili, the spokesperson for the Rassemblement for Mali party, articulates these concerns on behalf of the opposition. Members of the National Transitional Council also highlighted that there is potential for the Finance Act to be rectified, suggesting that adjustments may still be made to address the concerns raised by various parties.
More edit with our report filed in by WADR's Bamako correspondent Ali Cham. Meanwhile, 27 people were confirmed to have drowned when the boat conveying passengers capsized in the Timbuktu region of Mali. The boat was carrying around 50 passengers on their way to the weekly Tonka fair, also located in Timbuktu. 3 people are feared missing from the accident, an administrative official attributed to overloading and strong wind. The government has not yet reacted to this tragedy. It should be noted that during this period of flooding of the River Niger, the capsizing of commercial boats is a frequent occurrence in the Timbuktu region.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NEWSLINK continues.
Ahead of Ghana's 2024 general elections, the Electoral Commission (EC) has announced the cessation of using indelible link on voters' fingers during elections, citing the efficiency of the biometric verification system in preventing double voting. Traditionally employed to visually identify voters who have cast their ballots, the EC now deems indelible link as unnecessary with the advanced biometric technology. The Electoral Commission chairperson, John Mensah, clarified that the biometric system, coupled with strict voter registration controls, eliminates the need for indelible link. She said the biometric verification process ensures that each voter is verified only once, preventing any possibility of multiple voting.
The issue of indelible ink. The question is, when we were not doing biometric, we were basically using your face, your card, and to look at you. We look at your face and we say, this picture looks like you. The biometric technology makes it difficult for a person who has been verified and cast their vote to come a second time. So there's no need for indelible ink, because once you have been verified, it goes into the system and you cannot come back a second time. So you can try it if you wish at this election. Of course, it will be an electoral offense. And therefore, there's no need for indelible ink, which had been in place since 2012, since the beginning of 2012, when we were not using biometric. This is not something that you want to continue to do for the sake of it. You have biometric technology, and therefore you've departed from the system where you look at the picture and you can go anywhere else. And for now, you cannot have more than one card. Before, you could have multiple cards because the technology was not biometric. But now, anybody who attempts to do multiple registrations is flagged out.
John Mensah is chairperson of Ghana's Electoral Commission. Meanwhile, Ghana's Minister of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development anticipates substantial voter participation in today's district assembly elections. The ministry projects a turnout rate of at least 50%. A total of 66,000 candidates are poised to contest for assembly and unit committee roles in the district-level elections. But by Tuesday midday, the Electoral Commission announced the postponement of polls in some districts. It says for areas affected by the rescheduling, the elections will be held on Thursday, December 21st, 2023. Away from Ghana, the anti-corruption bill in the Gambia has progressed to the third reading stage in the legislative process. The bill introduced by the Office of the Attorney General seeks to establish a permanent anti-corruption commission aimed at curbing corruption in the country. The development transpired after the bill's approval by lawmakers who revisited and reconsidered clauses 2 and 75. From Banjul, WADR's Sankule Janko has more.
The proposal from the member for Brikama North and to stand part of the bill. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. No. The noes have it.
The anti-corruption bill underwent scrutiny to strengthen the Gambia's anti-corruption framework, seeking diverse insight for unique challenges. Detailed discussions occurred in Parliament addressing provisions, implications, and legal compatibility. Revisions were also made for clarity and effectiveness. Attorney General Dawda A. Jallow clarified aspects of the bill during parliamentary proceedings to allay members' concerns.
I wanted to allay the fears of those who might think assuming a particular Attorney General is involved in any corrupt practices. The practice is the person, once investigations conclude that you are implicated, you are removed. So there will be another Attorney General that will authorize your prosecution. You will not be sitting there to refuse to recommend your own prosecution. Because I remember in the debate, some people were concerned, how about if the Attorney General himself is suspected of a corrupt practice? He'll be removed from office. Other than that, currently, whether you put it in this legislation or not, the Attorney General have a constitutional power, and he's in charge of the prosecution policy of the country. He can take over any trial and discontinue it at will.
The anti-corruption bill was adopted, reflecting a commitment to crafting comprehensive anti-corruption legislation. Deputy Speaker Sidinjai played a significant role in the legislative process.
Honorable members, as communicated earlier at the consideration stage, the third reading of the Anti-Corruption Bill 2023 is now scheduled for the Honorable Attorney General and Minister for Justice to move for its third reading.
The anti-corruption bill advanced to the third reading, indicating readiness for a final decision by the legislative body. Lawmakers will conduct a final review of the bill during the third reading before casting their votes. The third reading outcome will be a crucial moment in the Gambia's ongoing fight against corruption. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Sankule Janko reporting from Banjul.
You are listening to NEWSLINK here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The Guinean government confirms 13 deaths and over 170 injuries from Monday's deadly explosion at the Conakry oil reservoir. Mali's political actors raise alarm over exclusion of election funds from 2024 budget. Ghana's Electoral Commission abandons indelible link embracing biometric verification for 2024 general elections. Ahead in the news, the Nigerian government unveils plans to address flooding challenges and revitalize the diminishing Lake Chad basin. We also have the press review, guest interview, and sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
And yes, remember we stream live on wadr.org. The Nigerian government says plans are underway to address flooding challenges and revitalize the diminishing Lake Chad basin. Minister of Environment Balarabe Lawal detailed these initiatives during 2024 budget defense session with lawmakers at the National Assembly. Lawal's presentation outlined multiple measures focused on mitigating the severe impacts of flood and sustainability of the Lifeline Basin. WADR's Abuja correspondent Osman Umar tells us more.
The minister has proposed a key strategy to address the shrinking Lake Chad by diverting water from neighboring countries. Given the Lake Chad's significant reduction in size, attributed to climate change and other factors, the government plans to replenish its water level by redirecting water from rivers and tributaries originating in Cameroon, Chad and Niger into Lake Chad.
We're looking at the issue of trying to re-engineer Lake Chad, for example. That has been going on for a long time. So this budget is looking categorically in trying to draw water from other parts of African countries to try to refill Lake Chad.
Additionally, the government aims to mitigate the impact of excessive rainfall during the rainy season by implementing a strategy to trap rainwater in reservoirs and storage facilities. This initiative seeks to capture and store surplus rainfall, thereby preventing flooding in vulnerable areas in Nigeria.
The issue of pension floods all over the country. We're trying to come up with so many new structures of trying to address these issues. For example, we're looking at the issue of harvesting rain. We're talking with some areas that have done that successfully. So that is coming in this year's budget, that trying to see that we trap the rain instead of allowing the rain to flood and destroy our farms, destroy our houses, destroy our shops. We're trying to find ways and means of trapping that rain in a way that it will not do that damage, so we can now transform that calamity into prosperity.
Nigeria has long grappled with persistent flooding, resulting in the loss of lives, displacement of communities, and damage to infrastructure and crops on an annual basis. Recognizing this ongoing challenge, the government has adopted a comprehensive approach that includes not only the diversion of water and rainwater storage, but also measures to control erosion. This multifaceted strategy is anticipated to have a significant positive impact on mitigating the devastating consequences of flooding in the country. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Well, and just before the press review segment, the West African Examination Council, WAEC, has withheld some subject results of candidates from 235 schools for giving artificial intelligence, that is AI-generated answers, during the 2023 edition of the West African Examination. This information was contained in a statement issued by WAEC on Monday announcing the release of the provisional results. The Regional Examination Council also cancelled the subject results of 3,647 candidates for bringing foreign materials such as prepared notes, textbooks, and printed materials into the examination halls. The result of some 839 candidates were cancelled for possessing mobile phones in the examination hall as well. WAEC has also withheld the subject result of some 4,280 candidates and the entire result of 1,005 for various suspected offences. The Examination Council also blocked the result of some 4,878 candidates for failing to return learning support material supplied to them by their respective schools.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Let's join Darlington Popeye Morovia for briefs on major and trending stories from the Liberia National Dailies.
For this edition of Press Review, we have the Front Page Africa newspaper, the Democrat newspaper, and the City Observer newspaper. So those are the three newspapers we will be going through for today's edition of Press Review. And we will begin the review process with the Front Page Africa newspaper that says, who's sabotaging President Weah? People is asking the question here. President George Weah has distanced himself from the December 12 vote in which Liberia, along with Israel and 8 other countries, stood against resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Liberia was the only African country to vote against the resolution, which passed with 153 votes in favor, 10 against, and 23 abstentions. However, on Sunday, President George Weah told members of the Foke Kolonjara Family Fellowship Church that he never instructed the vote against the ceasefire. Stay on the front page of the Front Page Africa newspaper. Did HPX bribe Liberian officials? We see the photograph of the legislature here. Denouncing sanctions on Liberian officials. U.S. presidential aspirant Rod Roberts criticized the grounds for visa restriction on Finance Minister Samuel Twe. From the Front Page Africa newspaper, the New Democrat newspaper is next. Contradiction. UP criticizes NAMOT's report. Congress passes law enabling U.S. government to prosecute sanctioned officials. On the back page of the Democrat newspaper, Bouaka gets U.S. support in fighting against corruption. We will leave it right there. The City Observer now is our last stop for this edition of the Press Review. On the front page of the City Observer, sapient legislator, House CDC's Deputy Speaker gave the U.S. a testimonials for sanctions against his partisans. Education is the most powerful weapon. We see Foreign Minister D. Maswesa Kimbiya on this one. Speaker Buffer Chambers underscored the need for sustained security structure. House Speaker Dr. Buffer Chambers is calling on African leaders to abolish the increased level of coups in the region. On that note, that is how we love to conclude today's edition of Press Review. Thank you so much for following, and bye-bye.
Indeed, many thanks, Darlington Popper.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon on NewsLink is Morgan Asogba, an international relations expert who speaks to proposed resumption peace talks chaired by Algeria between Malian authorities and the rebel armed groups in the north. On Monday, some signatory armed groups to have signed the 2015 peace agreement were present in Algiers. My first question to our guest is if the resumed dialogue would mean a review of the previous agreement that the Malian authorities did sign now that it has recaptured the northern region formerly controlled by the rebels.
Of course, it will be a whole review. At least there is a party that will insist on the fact that the whole thing should be reviewed, and that party is the Malian authorities, because a lot of things have changed. It is not the same contest anymore, even though we are still bargaining the issue of security for a peaceful environment. The power has shifted not just in the conflictual atmosphere, but also on the ground. So things should change thoroughly, especially when it comes to the authority of the different parties on a specific landmass. But I think currently the Malian authorities are in a dynamic that will not allow them to go for signing an agreement directly. And if you observe exactly what happened, those who have been more motivated in having this time around the peace talk are definitely the rebels, not per se the Malian authorities.
So is it possible to see, like you said, a review which will mean a permanent cessation of rebellion in the north? And should this be, how do you think this will be achieved?
It's going to be difficult to say it will happen just like that today. Why? Because we have a movement that is being built in terms of the alliances of Sahel states, and the main purpose of that alliance is that the state want to come together to finish in a sustainable manner the issue of security first, and then to look at the perspective of development in terms of economy, social development, and everything that goes in that direction. But the having an agreement today with the rebels or the terrorist groups within the Malian geography, and accepting that the authorities will have a limited access to what was considered once as the Malian territory in terms of geography, does not fall within the new dynamic of this the Sahel State Alliance, because the alliance has as target to reconquer all the geography of the three states that are being involved, and to deal in a sustainable manner with the rebellions, the terrorist groups, and the jihadists. So this is one of the dynamics that could prevent the parties from having an effective and concrete agreement.
That was Morgan Asogba, an international relations expert. It's now time to join Sankle Janko for some sports update.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup resumes on Wednesday, 20 December, with another dose of high-octane African club football lined up across the continent. A total of 8 fixtures marked the resumption of the competition, which will be match day 4 as the race towards a place in the quarterfinals heats up, CAF reports. One of the marquee fixtures for the week will be a battle between the number 1 spot in Group C as Nigeria's Rivers United travel to Tunis to face Club Africain. The two sides met last week, with the result going 1-0 in favor of United, which interestingly sees the two sides equally tied on points, goals scored and conceded. In another tie up north, Egypt's modern future will welcome USM Alger, who have been in fine form as they look to defend their title. The Algerian Giants have collected maximum points in all their 3 matches, boasting clean sheets in all their encounters, and will be looking at maintaining this impressive run according to CAF official website. In South Africa, Super Sports United must get a victory against Al Hilal Benghazi of Libya should they harbour any hopes of progressing further. Unlike their Pretoria counterparts, Mamelodi Sundown, United are yet to collect a single point in their previous 3 matches as they languished at the bottom of Group A. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And that's how we wrap up this edition of NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Maudo Juf for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English service, and stream live on WADR.org. I'm Abdullah Hassan. Coming up at the top of the hour is the second edition of our comprehensive news package in French and Fushifu. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, New FM 94.0, and